It's AI WTF, not what you're thinking, wisdom, technology, and friendship. And I'm with Monte Huebsch, and Monte's been rebuilding one of his websites. Now, traditionally, Monte's known as the Google guru, and he has websites and they perform really well. But recently, Monte used his AI to rebuild completely his website. Monte, good morning, and tell us what you've been doing.
Thanks for the introduction, Wayne. You're absolutely correct. I've had a website for 2.5, 3 years that was called preserver.me, M-E, and it was for my Preserver app, which is available in both the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. And my website was built by one of my co-directors, and he built it all, the initial website, in WordPress, which arguably is probably one of the largest open source website building platforms globally, with plugins for it for different activities and templates for recipes and templates for this and that. And so he had built that. He had it hosted here in Australia. Well, it's not just an Australian company. He had it hosted on a server called Bluehost, which is popular as well for an inexpensive hosting solution. And it had probably 15 to 20 WordPress plugins, doing everything from form to email to SEO, search engine optimization, and now AEO, artificial intelligence optimization. And unfortunately, while he's a good friend of mine and a co-director, he had some illness. So I felt a little bit concerned about trying to ask him to do any work while he's going through some medical challenges. So I decided to use my Claude cowork. And I basically said, go to my existing website, gather all the information, and give me a new one. And within 2 to 3 minutes, it said, I got your whole website. And I said, cool, show me where I can look at it. And it said, well, here's a URL for a test environment so you can review it before it goes live. It had taken off a lot of the videos that I had on it, which was fine. But the site was refreshed with recommendations for copy, a more clean, fresher look. It complained about my previous site being super slow on mobile, and it knew my traffic to the site through Google Analytics. So it said, you got to make it faster, you got to make it more user-friendly and scrollable, and the navigation. And it had all these suggestions, and it sent me to a demo area where I could look. And I could click on what it would look on desktop and what it would look like on mobile. And I said, wow, that's pretty impressive. I said, is it a WordPress site? It said, nope, just flat, old, small HTML.
They're very fast.
Okay, so it's just HTML. Where is it hosted? He said, oh, it's in a temporary location now, blah, blah, blah. I said, where should I host it? It said, well, you should host it on Cloudflare. Cloudflare has this thing called Cloudflare Pages. And I said, okay, well, what does that cost? It said, nothing, it's free. I said, what? It said, yep, Cloudflare, it's free. I said, well, okay, go publish it on Cloudflare. And it did. And it gave me a URL, preserver.me/dev whatever. And sure enough, there it was. And it said, would you like it to be on a unique URL? I said, no, I got a URL. It's called preserver.me. And it said, yes, I can see that Cloudflare is pointing to your old WordPress site. Would you like me to change that? I said, what are you going to change it? He said, I'm just going to go in. The domain coding for it to point the MX records and all of that are with GoDaddy. So it said I can just go in because it's already in Cloudflare. It knows the GoDaddy. It knows the records. I can just get Cloudflare to change those MX pointing records, and it's live. And I said, go ahead. And literally, Wayne, in less than it would take in an hour, I have a new site. And you can go to preserver.me. You can't see the old one. The old one had a lot of graphics. It probably had some things, but it was definitely a site that was built 5 years ago. The new one is slick as you know what. And then this is, again, still in Claude Code. It said, rightio. I said, can you now do all the meta tags? Can you give me a sitemap for it with all the new pages? Can you do SEO and AEO on the site? And it said, yep, I can do all that. And it did all the tagging and all of that. Alt image tags, yep, done. And then it said, oh, and by the way, since both of the website links to both the Apple Store and the Google Play Store, you should update your descriptions on those stores and this and that. Here's the text you need. Here's the titles you need. Here's the tagging you need. And by the time the afternoon was done, it had optimized my 2 app stores, my website, SEO, AEO, sitemaps, LLMMS, which is a special text file for answer engines. And it was all done in a half a day, Wayne. I couldn't believe it.
So this is when we read about AI replacing people, this is what's happening right now. This is the AI maybe replacing your web developer, but doing it by augmenting you.
It did, in fact, augment me. This morning, I needed to make some changes to my Termally, which is a service that I use for all my GDPR compliance and privacy policies and everything else. And I just gave it the links, and it put all the links in, and it did that. And I changed some other data on the website. And it took Cowork a minute or two to think, but then it said, oh, by the way, it's all published in live, and it's done in 30 seconds. So I now have by the way, I didn't code any of that HTML. I coded nothing.
Right.
And in the old days, you remember an Australian software company called Hot Dog, which allowed us to build HTML websites. I'm going back multiple decades now. This just did it all. And I can do a right-click view source, and I can see all the source. And yes, the coding is there, and the alt image tags are there, and everything that it said it did, it did.
And I'm assuming that when you want to change something on a page, you'll just tell Cowork what you want.
I just tell it verbally, or I type it, either one. I can say, in fact, I did that. I said, hey, it's still referencing an address on the Sunshine Coast. Change it to Brisbane, Australia, and Sunnyvale, California. And it said, well, that's done. And I think I'm on the site as we speak, and it now says those locations. Pretty hard to argue with outcomes, Wayne.
So what's the negative about this, Monty? What's the downside of this? Do you see any?
Well, I guess I'm now the website maintainer and operator, where I used to be able to have he wasn't an employee, he was the co-director of the company. I used to ask him, but he's got medical issues. So now I have that responsibility, but it's not onerous because it's done so quickly. I can just tell it to make a correction, and by the time I can refresh my browser, it's there. And the cost was zero. I didn't pay for anything. Oh, I take that back. It made me set up an account with something which was to process the form on the website for data collection.
Right.
And I had to do that. And then I had to verify the email and do that. Now I'm going back in it because, of course, I'm already starting to get spam in that, and it's got spam features and other things that it'll do. but that was the equivalent of the only plugin that I added to it.
So I was going to ask you about this. What were the issues, the guardrails, the security? Could you point this at someone else's website and make a full duplicate of
it? Conceivably, I could. I don't know for that to be true or not.
Right. So you didn't have to give it any logins to your existing website. It was just reading the public website, so I presume it could.
Well, it knew that I already had on my old website a connection to Cloudflare, which is kind of the DNS record for the world now. Everybody, Amazon and everybody else, runs things through Cloudflare. And it said you're there and all your records are there, so I can make the changes for you.
So I'm guessing that it couldn't do that without your consent somewhere.
That's true. Yes.
Otherwise, there would be chaos on the internet.
Yeah, well, I'd be taking over your site or my competitor's site or repointing it to me or something else.
But that aside, in terms of duplicating a site, sounds like it can do it.
Well, and significantly enhanced it, both from the, I could tell it. I'm like you, Wayne. I really have some affinity for the color of orange, which I can see on your shirt.
Yes.
So I asked it to highlight key points on my website in orange and to use that, and it did. I did create a chat bot that I had it add to the website, which I'm going to remove, but it did that, and I can keep that if I want. It brought in the logo for the Apple Store and the Google Store, and they're both linkable and take you to where you want to go. And I make the mistake, Wayne. I don't believe you do it as badly as I do, but I'm sitting in front of my my MacBook Air, and I've got a Zopa second monitor, so I've got two monitors. So I'm used to seeing things on, these are 16-inch or 17-inch screens, whatever, high resolution. But when I look at the data from Google Analytics or the Search Console, or it had me install a thing called Microsoft Clarity, which is Microsoft's equivalent to Search Console, where it actually gives you a heat map of where people move on your site. And again, it's a free service, but I don't always look at my own websites and my own content on a mobile device. I should, but I don't. And now I'm sitting here looking at it and I go, now this is sharp, quick, fast. Pretty hard to beat.
So this is stuff we've talked about before, but it's nice to have your first-hand testimony about it, that it all happened and it all worked. So AI is getting better and better and better and faster and faster and faster. And anyone who's been following the news would have seen that the US government has just stopped Anthropic, which is the owner of Claude Cowork, from publishing 2 of their models because they're so good. They worried the government about national security. And
Mythos, and what was the other one? Fairy or something? It started with an F, I think.
I don't actually recall the name of the other one. Mythos was one of them, but every time I open Cowork now, it pops up and tells me that it's not available.
Oh, Cowork's not available.
No. The new models are not available.
Ah, right. Yes, I agree.
So for people who are, a bit lost with AI, this is the future. What we're seeing is a number of large language models, often called LLMs, that are owned by big companies like Anthropic or Elon Musk companies, OpenAI, and there's a bunch of these, probably 10 that make the cut for, the top end. The ones I've named are American, but in the in China, there's DeepSeek and others which are becoming very highly rated as well. And as we've seen happen on the internet with browsers and email programs and whatever, while we thought at the beginning that this would democratize everything and there would be thousands of providers of websites and thousands of providers of email. And what we've seen over the intervening 25 odd years is that the internet favors a few, maybe only one, big winners. If we ask people to list e-commerce stores, we'd probably only get two, Amazon and Shopify maybe. The promise that was there originally for there to be thousands of providers and for everyone to be able to do their own is not there. And AI, as we know it now, is so new that we don't know who that's going to be, but it's changing very quickly. Yes. And competition is on between these. Google has their own AI. Apple, I think, has just released one of their own. Microsoft has partnered with someone else. We're going to see this shakeout and this roll-up of AIs come along. I rarely make predictions, but here is my prediction. Won't be very long before all of us have our own personal AI. And yes, that AI will run on a device, and we'll probably actually buy that device just to run the AI. So likelihood is it's going to look like a laptop or it's going to look like a computer. It'll be a computer, but it will be built to just hold AI. And we'll connect that to the internet. And when you want to use a word processor, you won't go, oh, let me open Google Docs or let me open Microsoft Word, let me open something else. We'll just say to the one interface, I need to write a document, and it will create a word processor for you on the fly and give it to you.
Yep.
And we won't have Excel or whatever spreadsheet. We'll just say, I need to do something with some numbers and columns, and it'll create one for you. You're trying to get a word in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's kind of a segue. I don't think you're wrong, by the way, in your prediction. But I remember, and I followed it for a long time, a thing called the Khan Academy, K-A-H-N, Khan. And he was an educator. And he was creating YouTube videos for his sister's kids or something on a bunch of topics. And they're available on the internet. You can search Khan Academy and you can see all of it. And then he went outside his background in math and physics and algebra and all of that into social sciences and biology and physics. At one point, he had said that his goal was to create a teaching mentor or assistant for every child in the world. And he got funding to do that and sponsorship from Bill Gates and some other people. And so I was looking at it the other day. I said, what happened to the Khan Academy in the situation? He's retracted that. He said, couldn't do it, didn't want to do it, didn't see it as value. I'm now working on educational systems with educational bodies, the School of Education in California and New York, to create those sorts of tools for students so that they can have individualization tutors that understand them and know them. But he says, I want it enhanced with human beings and back and forth so that the human is watching what's going on and providing some sort of oversight in that capacity. Not always for ethics, but just for understanding and everything else. And to see somebody who had such a big idea, that moonshot, and step it back to AI and humans as collaborators rather than one to replace, I thought was an interesting viewpoint from somebody who I respect.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. There are some things that I don't see much evidence that AI will be able to do. And one of them will be assess the human that's talking to them in terms of their ability to comprehend and understand and then tailor things to them. Now, I'm sure that's coming. And right now, Monty runs Hermes as a harness on his system, and it's an AI called Heidi. I run Hermes and OpenClaw on mine, and I have Jake, which is my general manager AI. And they both have gotten to know me pretty well. And I don't have to start them from scratch every time I turn them on. Cowork has now got, well, Claude, Cowork and Claude Chat now has some of that memory built into it. And we're starting to see these AIs develop much better memory, which allows them to know what's previously been discussed. So I predict that when we have those devices that we turn on that are just AI and not any other operating system, it will be personalized. People will get it when they're 4 or 5 years old, and it will stay with them for a lifetime. And it will know everything about you. It'll know how you like to get your information. It'll know what you know about things, and it'll know how to teach you and how to advise you. And that's what I predict for the future.
I want to have one segue on that, and then I want to take you back around to your recent experience with the council.
Okay.
But before we go to the council, I've got in my hand a pair of Apple iPods. Now, they're pretty good. They're intelligent. I can plug them in my ears, and I can speak and listen, and I don't interrupt people when I'm in transport or going someplace. They might wonder why I'm talking to myself, but I can do that, and it works quite well. My understanding is that Apple's looking to enhance these things one step further by including a camera in each of your ear that will be added to the earpods.
Yes.
Which is an interesting way, because they've kind of decided that they figure the device that's going to be AI enhanced will be earpods. Now, OpenAI went down a different track. They've been talking with John Ives, who is the developer in Apple of the iPhone and iPads and a lot of other stuff, to have him develop a universal AI device that everybody will have. Whether that's a clip-on or a wear, who knows? Hasn't come out yet. But it's interesting to see that, particularly these little guys, you know, of course, they connect to your phone, so that's their internet interface. And I've got a Claude on my phone, and I've got Hermes on my phone, OpenAI on my phone. So it'll be interesting to see whether the input-output device becomes Apple's image, because it already has sound in and out. So if it adds image, that'll be interesting. Or whether John Ives working with OpenAI will come up with an alternative.
Or whether Google Glasses will become popular in their third version of it now.
Yep. And Meta's Ray-Bans.
So yes, how will it be? But I think we will connect and live with AI 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
It will absolutely kill the streaming video channels, because instead of going to whichever one you're using, you know, Netflix or HBO or whatever, and looking at the option of what's available, your device, that's your AI device, will create that channel for you on the fly, and it may even be creating content for you on the fly. So if you like this style of story and this style of presentation, it may just create it for you. It can do that now, but it's not instantaneous. So that's where we're headed.
A great one that's in Denmark, in Danish, that's in the genre you like. It'll subtitle it or voice over it or whatever and bring it to you. So your choices will expand globally. Language is no longer a discriminator.
And it'll be interesting whether anyone gets paid to be an actor in those, or whether they're all created on the fly. They may look like an actor, you know, but they may not be. And I don't have earpods like you do. I have old-fashioned headset with an old-fashioned wire. I'm not a great lover of the connectivity puzzle. I find it to be the least reliable part of the system, be it Bluetooth or be it Wi-Fi, whatever it is. And we're on the verge of Starlink now offering internet connectivity directly to the phone, and we're not too far away from that connecting to other devices, maybe like your earpods. So maybe you won't need an Apple phone in the mix. The connectivity will come directly from the satellite. So it's a
And we both know, I don't necessarily disagree with you call it old school or whatever with your wired headset. But I can tell you one thing about your wired headset. It won't run out of battery.
This is very true. And it doesn't say cannot pair. You know, the end is plugged into something and I know where it's going. And I should comment about my orange shirt. Orange is now becoming a very common corporate color. I've used it for years, but not for any aesthetic reason. Being a tight ass, I wanted a color that didn't use all of one of the colors in my printer.
Right.
So I wanted a color that was a mix roughly across them. So I've always used corporate colors that are using roughly each color in the printer equally. So for outsourcing fit, we use black, white, and orange. So we don't go through any one color too much. But that's why we're in orange. And it's become the corporate color for me. And like you, I also use it on websites and document stuff and other places. We mentioned the council earlier, Monty, and I do want to talk about this. This is addresses one of the problems that's been bugging me since I started using AI. I've never been told what a genius I am and how brilliant my questions are so often as when I started using AI. All of them kind of started every reply with, "Oh, what a genius question. You're absolutely right. This is just spectacularly clever." And this, of course, has been built in by the large language model operators, because it knows that if it wants me to come back and use it, it should say nice things about me. It's how we perceive people as being friendly. So the problem with that is that because I was asking it now some fairly sophisticated questions, I wasn't getting a balanced set of responses. So I read about, or I didn't read it, I watched on YouTube a few months ago someone who had this model of a council that he would give you, and it was a prompt. And so I didn't go with his because I wanted to change a few bits and pieces. So I created my own council, and because my AIs all share memory, which is to say they share a set of files that are its memory and that tell the AI when it restarts what it knows about you. So I configured mine, even though they're on different computers, to share those files through Google Drive, running on the various computers that I'm using. So I've got a copy of the council here in front of me, and I'm actually reading from that shared memory file, and it starts with what it is. So this was written from my instructions by the AI. The council is a thinking method, not a new agent. When Wayne asks for it, the agent holding the problem looks at it through several fixed lenses in turn, then a chairperson role integrates them into a single recommendation. The point is to force divergent views before converging. So the easy bull case does not go unchallenged, and the failure modes get named out loud. So who do I have in here? And I will post this document if I can. It might be a bit too long, but if I can, I'll post it in the description of this chat today. I'm not going to go through and read it all, but it has a trigger phrase, and the trigger phrase is spoken naturally. Advise me on X. So it's, as a council, advise me on this, or do this question in council mode. And if I use the word council like that, it triggers all of them to load the council instructions, which is what I'm reading to you, and then to go through this quite detailed process. Some of them will use sub-agents, some of them will do it in one agent as best suits them. So who do I have on the council? I have an enthusiast. Argue the upside, best case, what could go right, why this is worth doing. Names the opportunity and the path to it, leads the bull case. So this is not the Australian use of the word bull, but the stock market use of the word bull. It downplays nothing dishonestly, but its job is to make the strongest honest case for yes. Then number 2, the contrarian. This mandate, argue against the emerging view, including against Wayne's own stated preference and against the enthusiast. Names the strongest objection and the failure mode no one is looking at. The discipline, required to disagree, not to hedge. If it finds itself agreeing, it is not doing its job. Then the commercial member of the council. Mandate, the money lens, margin, pricing, unit economics, cost of delay, optionality, do it in US dollars, consistent with my normal business rules. Quantify where possible. A claim with no figure attached to it is weak. Next one, council member 4, the legal person. Regulatory and contractual considerations, where it applies, use the relevant legislation from all of the jurisdictions that are going to be involved, and the permanent caveat, never remove this legal lens given consideration and questions. The 5th member of my council. Oops, I overscrolled. The operator. This is the person, this is the view of who does the actual operations. Mandate, execution realism. What breaks, who actually does the work, what the real world friction is. No theory, concrete steps, named owners, real failure points. If a step has no named owner and no realistic time cost, it is not yet a plan. My second to last, number 6, the skeptic or the red team. Mandate, stress test the plan as if trying to make it fail. Name the load-bearing assumptions, the single points of failure. And then 7th, my domain expert. So for whatever domain this question is, whether it's, in my case, I do some stuff in hospitality and accommodation, I do some stuff in outsourcing, I do some stuff in often questions in banking, because I'm a multinational company. I'm a multinational company of 3 people, but I'm a Hong Kong-based entity. I do a lot of work in the Philippines. I also work with clients in Australia and America. So the domain expert has to assume they're an expert in the relevant domain and talk about how do we stay inside that named domain, flag where the question sits outside it, so with any chorus member's competence. My last one is the council chairman or the synthesizer, who reads all of these inputs from all of the other council members, yes, and then summarizes it like a chairman does, and I get that as a document, like a set of minutes for a council meeting. So I can read what every viewpoint was, and then I can read the summary for it. So I've recently started doing this, and I have to say I'm very, very happy with it. I can't claim to be a genius because of this. I've got AI to tell me what a genius I am. And I took the idea from what someone else was doing on their YouTube video, but I expanded it, and they're the ones I'm using. And I have to say, I'm very happy with the output template. So
now have you been doing that? On which platform have you run it on? Are you running that on OpenClaw? Are you running it on Hermes? Are you running it on Claude? Are you running it on XAI and Grok? Where are you using that prompt?
Monty, I have Hermes called Ian, and OpenClaw called Jake, and Claude on my desktop called Henry, and I use it both in chat mode and in co-work mode. I don't use it to code anything because I haven't needed to. But all of these write a summary of every discussion to a common drive. They all keep their what are called soul.md, which is who they are, and their memory.md, which is what their job is. all in MD. For anyone who's listening, it's just markdown language. It's just an easy way to put stuff in a document without tying it to a particular platform. But they all have their own, and they all have a shared one. So all of them know how to be a council. And so I don't have to go from one to the other to the other. Now, with Hermes and OpenClaw, they are not intelligent AIs on their own. They are what I call a harness. They're software that runs on a particular computer, and in my case, a Mac Mini, but they don't have a large language model until I give them one.
Yes.
So I used to have them both working on Anthropic, but it cost me a lot in tokens. I now have them both running on DeepSeek, which costs me about 1/100th of the price. And DeepSeek's pretty good now. I think Anthropic and Claude are probably better for deeply nuanced, deep research. But for a lot of the stuff I do, it's much cheaper for me to just do it on Hermes or OpenClaw. So whichever one I'm using, I can ask the same question. And because they've shared that prompt, that file I was reading from is available to all of them. And another file tells them, as soon as I say council, go read this file. And I have to use council in context. It's smart enough. It's not like council is just a co-word. I only have one stop word, and I'm not going to tell anyone that. But I have a co-word which, when I say that word, it stops all of the AIs. And it just turns all of the AIs off. So if they're doing something that I think is absolutely wrong, I say the secret word, and that stops them all from operating.
Yeah.
And I have a resumption process that I have to go through to resume that.
Yeah.
So it's not like that. That word is a word that I cannot use in ordinary conversation anywhere or in any context, because it just stops the whole affair. Yeah. But to say council, I can use it in dictation, I can say it, I can use it. But if I use it in the context of form a council, be a council, deal with this question as a council, then it forms a council, and it gives me a long and detailed answer with deep thinking. Now, if I do that in Claude, I get probably better deep thinking than if I use it in the other two.
Let me just stop you for a second there, because I did put in council mode, and according to Gemini, which is Google's thing, artificial intelligence, it calls it multi-model prompting.
Yes.
In AI, a council mode or model council is a feature in advanced interfaces where your prompt is sent to several different AI models simultaneously, i.e. GPT, Claude, and local open source models, which is like DeepSeek, and the system aggregates, compares, or synthesizes the process to give you a more well-rounded and accurate answer.
Yes. Now, I didn't invent the word, as I said. I saw it on YouTube, but this is worth doing if you've got a detailed question. I'm thinking of leasing some property and starting a new business. This is a big question. So I've had many conversations with my AIs, and we've looked at it in detail about, whether this is look at it from this way and looking at that way and looking at the other way. And I think I'm now ready to go ahead. So my last case, because I didn't have the council when I started thinking about this, was to feed it into the council and say, review these documents, which are what I've got there as a council, and critique them. And the result, I have to say, has been pretty good. So that's what I've been doing with the council. And as I said, I'm going to share the prompt. Now, I think you can put that prompt into any AI you like, and it may not remember it, but it will act as a council. So depending on what you're using, you may have to put it in every time you want to use it, but you can do that and you will get the same results that I've been getting.
Well, when we finish this conversation, I'm going to be looking for your prompt, and I'm going to put it into mine. So I'll put it into both my Hermes and my Claude.
Yep. And if you put it in there with both of those, with Hermes and with Claude, tell it to remember it and put it into its memory. and you can use it anytime you like.
Yeah,
Now,
I think you've expanded on the definition that I provided, which was just a generic one, because you've actually assigned roles. This goes back to, who's the fellow that had the 7 hats? Remember
7 hats, yeah.
7 thinking hats. You're kind of doing that, because you got the enthusiast, the economist, the lawyer, and so you've defined, which is what I'm looking forward to, the parameters of each expertise, which I think is brilliant, and you can take credit for that.
And the nice thing, Monty, is as I'm using it, like the council model that I've looked at that was originally on the YouTube, the thing it lacked was domain knowledge. No one said someone's got to be an expert in website development, someone's got to be an expert in driving, car hire or restauranteering or whatever. And I've added that to mine's, an expert in domain knowledge. But because it's only in a text file that the 3 are sharing, I can just edit that by saying to it, in the future, when you do counsel, please add to it someone who is I can't think of one that I've missed. Think of one who is an environmentalist, and add their insight and share this with the other AIs, and then they'll all be giving me feedback on that as well.
Yep.
Now, the other thing that's been getting my attention this week has been the impact that's happening with outsourcing, because as you know, I work in the outsourcing industry, and I don't run a business process outsourcing company, but I do provide outsourcing advice to a lot of people and share a lot of information with people, and we do recommend BPOs and help people be successful in them. The BPO industry was originally going to be, or was thought about as, just going to disappear because AI was going to wipe it out.
Yeah.
And a number of companies around the world have put lots of AI in and made lots of people redundant and reduced their headcount at a lot of BPOs. But I've got to say, in my observation here in the Philippines, I see the business process outsourcing companies booming and growing. And I just read in the Australian news this week, I think there were 3 or 4 big companies, Telstra might have been one, might have been a couple of banks in there, who are outsourcing lots of roles, not to AI, but to the Philippines as humans. And we talked last week about augmentation of humans by AI, and I really think this is a really important point to talk about again. I'm still saying to my clients, yes, you should use outsourcing, but you should only be outsourcing to a BPO that has a firm grasp of AI. They haven't just added AI to their name. They haven't just, started publishing about AI. They've actually embedded AI into their selection of staff and into their training of staff. And the BPOs that I advise, I'm saying you guys should be spending, let's say, $20 a month and providing an AI to every one of your staff. Because we have discovered in our little 3-month journey, Monty, that this is not intuitive and it's not easy. I advise people to personalize their AIs and treat them like a teenage genius. These are like a new employee. They are like a teenager in their mentality, but they've got genius level education. So, they might have 10 PhDs in knowledge, but they have bugger all in experience. You don't say to your new 17-year-old employee, go and sort out this dispute between the head of HR and the head of operations. You're just going to get a huge fight. What you do, let me train you and teach you and give you the wisdom of my experience. Let me share this with you. And they slowly come up to the speed you want. They might have read and understand every piece of HR legislation in the world. They might have read everyone's book on it, but they don't have the experience. They don't have the wisdom to be able to do it. So treat your AI like it was a new, highly informed, but under-experienced employee, and someone has to supervise them. Well, they'll predict, when you employ now someone, when you want to grow your team and you want to do it at low cost, don't go away from outsourcing. Use an outsourced staff member, but in a BPO where they embrace AI. And then have your team member, your human person, supervise the AI.
Yep. And to expand on that concept, I think it's critical to acknowledge if we say that AI started to get its chops, earn its chops, it was back in October, I think, of 2023. Early days of OpenAI, and really not significant until 2024. So we're really coming up on a 2-year anniversary shortly here. And my only reason for that is the BPO today, there's nobody who can say, well, there are very few people can say they're an AI expert with 10 years or 15 years experience. They can talk about machine learning and coding and a bunch of other stuff. And there are fathers that, if you Google, ask Gemini, it'll say, oh, the father of AI was so-and-so from 30 years ago. But in reality, when it's come down to our consumer level and business level, it's only become popular in the last 2 or 3 years. So my point about that is having an outsourced person who has been trained in it, it's got to be within the last 2 years, because there wasn't a lot of training before that.
Yep.
So I think your caveat of make sure you're outsourcing to somebody that has that, has been exposed to that in the last 2 years, but also then has the knowledge and wisdom of having done outsourced processes for companies around the world. So they know customer service, they know sales funnels and sales processes, they know international accounting rules and regulations and legal compliance. So they have that experience. And when I was lecturing just a few months ago, I said, you really need to be at the front end, which is why I'm so excited about your council concept and the fact that you've identified those roles. That's the prompting in the beginning. You then need the QA at the end to say, does this pass the WTF test?
Yes.
That's WTF in a different framework than what we use it in.
So,
to say, does this pass my knowledge and experience from my years of being in the industry providing the service?
Yeah.
So there you
go. There's been outsourcing around for 30 or 40 years, but it was mainly call centers.
Yeah.
The commonest outsourcing now, and particularly for small and medium enterprises, which I specialize in, is what I call co-managed outsourcing. And by co-managed, I used to mean there is the BPO, there is the outsourced staff person, and there is the business that pays for them. And so those, in that format, those existing BPOs are very well educated in business processes. Everyone thought AI was going to be the province of the IT people, but in fact, it looks like the IT people are going to be the victims of it, not the owners of it. I think the BPOs might end up being the owners of it. But we've recently changed the name of my channel that I used to put these interviews on, from Offshoring and Outsourcing Philippines to co-managed, because we've added to that co-managed set AI now. So AI is going to manage some of your work. You're going to manage some of it. The BPO is going to manage some of it. And the staff, the outsourced staff, are going to manage some of it. So it becomes a 4-way process. And that's why I call it co-managed.
Yes. Yep. And that we've kind of bastardized that by talking about it with augmentation, the human AI augmentation. But
so I predict we will see, within a few years, we will see organizational structures. I think they'll still have structure, because people like org structures. The reason I give all my AIs a personality and a name is that's what I'm used to managing. And I'm used to having a hierarchical structure. And I think that's what we'll still see most people doing. And some of my AIs, one of them is a Llama model, Gary. A Llama is a model that you can install entirely on your own computer. It has intelligence without the internet at all. It doesn't have to go out to anything. And its job is to do research on BPOs. And to do that, it has to go to the internet to do that. But its job is pretty simple. It's a job that I would have a 17-year-old high school graduate outsourced person doing. It's go to a search engine, type in BPO, make a list, now go to their website, look at them, fill in these 12 criteria for each one, put that all into a database that I can use to populate my BPO directory with. And it can do that, but it's completely free, doesn't use any tokens, exists entirely on my Mac Mini with the others.
Yep.
And that's what we're going to use for some work.
Yes.
But we need a hierarchy, because I can't tell it to go and write me a nuanced answer like I'm going to get from Claude Cowork, because it doesn't have the size behind it. My Alarma is only a 2 gigabyte one, so it's not a very big model. It doesn't know a lot of stuff, whereas Cowork knows a lot of stuff. So yeah. By the way, when we're talking about this stuff, and we mentioned it last week, I always worry that we're leaving some of you behind, that you don't know what we're talking about. If we make it really simple, it will sound like we're talking to the first, the class that's only just getting introduced to this. So if you'd like to have a call with me, you can book a call with me. I'm happy to talk to you about anything I talk about. I'm happy to talk to you about for free. Some of the stuff we get into, I may well want to charge you a fee for it, but we won't do that until after we've had a conversation and I get to know a bit about you and you get to know a bit about me. And if you think I've got some value to add, I'm happy to do that. Monte still does a range of that same sort of consulting in various fields. Monte was called the Google guru for many years and is rapidly becoming the expert, not just in SEO, search engine optimization, but also in AEO, answer engine optimization. So if you're wondering what's going to happen with your websites, Google has already said the SEO is going to decline very rapidly, because more and more people are going to Google and searching, and they're only seeing one answer.
Yes.
That is the one that's given to them by the AI on Google. So
the statistic on that, Wayne, is 70% of Google searches have no click anymore.
And what answer engine optimization does, and what Monte can help you with, is how do you get your BPO to be part of that answer? Sorry, not your BPO. Old age is catching up with me. Your business. How do you get your business, people looking for a service you provide, how do you get that to be in the answer that is the one click that Google gives?
At the sake of trying to get too long on this, Google used to have an evaluation called EAT, which was expert, authoritative, and trustworthy. And they wanted to see content that matched that criteria. They added another E to it because they know, and I know from my experience of rebuilding my website, anybody can now go to my website and rebuild my website in hours, if not minutes. The defining or determining result is the last E, which is evidence. They want to see the Google reviews, the reviews in different online platforms. They want to see the testimonials. They want to know that it's not only expert, authoritative, and trustworthy, which every AI can be. They want to know the evidence. So it's worth asking your AI as well when it gives you, when you have your counsel. One of those needs to be the evidence checker that says, where has this, if the results come out that it's XYZ, where has Z actually worked, and give me, it's like peer review. Give me the expert proof that it actually worked.
And you've hit on a really good point. So much content is now being created by AI with genius level everything. One of the things that's going to happen in everything, in news, in movies, in social media, in websites, is how do I know who to trust? And if you're thinking of outsourcing from Australia or America or the UK, wherever you're watching in the world, and you just type, I want to outsource into Google, what you're going to come up with is hundreds of BPOs. And if you look at their websites, They all look good. They all say that they're wonderful. They all do the same thing. But verification and vetting of those BPOs is now a really important feature. And it's a part of our business that we do, because it's a big investment. You know, an outsourced EA is going to cost between 1,500 and 2,500 Aussie dollars. So between 1,000 and 1,500 US dollars a month. A lot cheaper than hiring someone, like 60%, 80% saving on hiring someone locally. But if you stay there for 10 years with a team of 20 of those, and you do the maths and you say, oh, all right, I'm paying $2,500 for 20 people, that's 25,000 by 2 is 50,000 a month, and I'm going to do that for 10 years, that becomes a multi-million-dollar purchase. And you don't want to do that without doing your due diligence, seriously. Yeah. Because the greatest asset you will have in those people every week you spend with them and training them is more of your knowledge gets locked into those individuals, and it will become, there'll be lock-in. It'll be hard to leave that and just go to another BPO. So that's why more and more BPOs are coming to us to say, can you verify these guys? Can you tell us it's real? Can you tell us how likely they are to go broke? Can you go through this 15-page contract for us, which we have done, and tell us where the bear traps are? So again, if you're thinking of outsourcing, find an address for me in the description of the thing, or go to outsourcingfit.com. That should be on your screen, I hope, and reach out and catch up to me. And I'm happy to have a conversation with you about that. So Monty, we are running short on time. We're just 3 minutes away from being an hour, which, while Monty and I can talk for days, we did say we would try and limit this to our a 1 hour piece. So if you've stuck with us this long, you're clearly enjoying what we're talking about. So please let us know. Let us know where you're listening from, because as I said before, we think you're in America, and we think we're in the UK, and we think you're in Australia. Tell us what country you're in and what city you're in, so that we know. Drop it in a message so that we can tailor some of this. Click on whatever the buttons are on the platform you're using to tell us that you liked the content or you didn't like the content. In either case, drop us a message. You can find both Monty and myself also in LinkedIn. Drop us a DM there. We do read all the messages we get to see, and let us know what's going on. Please remember that none of this was financial or legal advice. It's just two old farts who we think, under the WTF heading of wisdom, technology, and friendship, have been around in this space for a good while, and we're trying to share that somewhere with you. Monty, I'll leave you to close this out.
Yeah, well, I'm now concerned because we had WTF, which we talked about wisdom, technology, and friends, but now it's going to be that everybody who's watched their last little bit there is going to change it to wisdom, technology, and old farts.
Well, I can't deny that. It may be that. It may be that. I'm not sure that that's a universal description everywhere in the world, but in Australia, it certainly is.
It is, Wayne. We've enjoyed your company, and like he says, give us some feedback. Let us know. It also helps with the algorithm, so give it a shot.
So it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from him.